Hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing all right. So today we are taking the train of the Pride Month, and we are going to be talking about, being gay and why being gay fucking sucks, even though we got an entire month all for ourselves. Yay. We all know it's mostly commercial, but anyways, it's always good to have some representation out there. So in this video, we'll be covering a few topics over here. They are on my computer. I'll be checking on them briefly. So I'm just gonna list them just so you get to know exactly what we're gonna be talking about here. We will be talking about living into a heteronormative world, the coming out of being gay, certain homophobia that is internalized also. We'll be talking about dating, relationships, straight spaces, and microaggressions. So the fact that you may get yourself into some other spaces that are considered normal, let's put it on quote, right? And how it feels having to portray something. We will be talking about also about the expectation to be okay, finding your chosen family, because for many people out there it's really not a choice to be with their own blood family. Thankfully for me it wasn't too bad, but we'll also be talking about that, right? And we will also talk about moving forward, because it is also very important to find joy and resilience out there. Just for a quick background, I am 35 years old. I currently live in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. I grew up, so I do have a little bit of experience of being here in Brazil, and I also lived in the United States for about 10 years. So my experience will be extremely tailored for a few people out there. But again, miles may vary. People have all different experiences. Just consider that. Okay, so the first topic that we're gonna get is the way of otherness, just about feeling different in a heteronormative world. Just imagine yourself, growing up, and you notice people start telling stories about themselves, and it's always about a girl and a boy. And then you watch a movie, it's about a girl and a boy, and you start seeing your family, because most of your family will pretty much be heterosexual, and you will start thinking that that is the only type of love that you're gonna see out there. It's just straight love. And depending of when or how you start coming out to yourself, that may have all sorts of different factors. And some of you guys may even feel like, oh my god, why don't I feel a certain way, right? So there is this way of simply always sitting outside of the circle and seeing everybody do their own stuff, but your life doesn't necessarily move like everybody else does. That is something that comes with being gay. It's just noticing that everybody's lives are completely different. Heterosexual life is like, yep, you go to school, you get together with somebody, you get paired with someone, depending on your culture, right? And then you start having kids, and you start raising kids, and you go to a job, and then come back home, you see your family, and whatnot. And that's the normal life for the gays out there. Many of us are very much single, and it's pretty hard. So, but we'll get there eventually. By the way, I'm having a beer, so cheers, because I gotta get my mouth wet over here, guys. So also in this weight of otherness, we can talk about the unspoken curriculum, like everything from sex education or wedding ads reinforces heterosexuality as a default, which it is the default, right? It's not just about what's said, but what's assumed. So for strangers, if you're not literally carrying a gay flag on top of your forehead, everybody will assume that you're just, open quote, normal, close quote. but that's pretty much how it goes out there. Everything is straight, everything is catered towards straight. You will see also nowadays, especially in politics, where some politicians are completely against gay education, right? They will say it's the gay book, it's a gay handbook teaching kids how to be gay and whatnot. But in all reality is that these people are also us, and they grow up to be us. And unfortunately, some of them don't have the education, they don't have the support to know exactly what's going on their heads. You may see this sense of being invisible versus on display. It's never middle ground. A lot of times when you're telling your own story out there, many people may not understand what you're really going through. You may feel like you're not really recognized. You may feel like people don't understand you. And then at some point in your lives, when some people get on board with it, or if some people takes the time, you may feel like people are nitpicking on what you do, what do you think, what your lifestyle is like. People may even try to judge the way you live, judge the way you think, and think that's, you are an outsider, which in kind of a way we are anyways. Then you may get the why me moment, right? It's grappling with why you're part of a minority that faces particular challenges when others don't have to think about it. So being gay, or for the people that are out there thinking about coming out, or the people who live in a closet, right? That's what we usually go through. You're a minority. We do have way more representation nowadays than we had, let's say, maybe 10-20 years ago. As I said, I'm 35, so we have evolved quite a bit compared to when I was 10-15 years old. But that's pretty much how it takes, right? It's having to understand that you are a minority, and that your experience is very much more unique than other people out there. We got a completely different flow compared to the open quote normal people, close quote. All right, so now we're gonna get started with the coming out. How is pretty much it is pretty much a process and not a single event, and it is very much filled with anxiety and uncertainty. Many of you, again, this happened to me when I was way younger. It doesn't happen as much nowadays, but we may have endless rehearsals where we are trying to having a right answer for everybody that pops up, because it is going to be let's just say it happens very often to us that many of us may start trying to craft a response, try to craft a reaction. So many of you guys may go through those endless rehearsals, but as you start getting older, those rehearsals starts going away, and you stop caring about certain things. You stop caring about certain people. You start understanding that not everybody is really for you, and not necessarily everybody should be around you anyways. Many people go through the fear of rejection. We ask ourselves if our family will still love us, if our friends will abandon us, if will we ever lose our job because let's say you may have a homophobic boss, right? And they just may decide that you're just not the right fit to be in the company. Or you may be in a company, we live in a capitalistic world where we all got to work somehow, where we all got to be part of society somehow. And many of you guys may be finding yourselves in jobs where the leadership are not necessarily LGBTQ friendly, and you might have to play a facade, right? But there is this very much constant fear of being judged. and having this burden of always trying to explain ourselves, whether you're already out or not. If you're not on outside of the closet, guess what? Then that is something that you might be good at lying at this point, depending on how old you are and where you are in your journey. But yeah, it always involves also into trying to educate others about your identity, and sometimes you have to repeat yourself because some people really don't understand, and all that you want to really do is just be yourself. But sometimes that's really not possible. You just gotta wear a mask. You just gotta be someone else. You may get yourself into some situations where you have no choice but to out yourself or being outed by someone else. You know, there is this sense of either having to control everything behind you, or losing that control when someone else decides to maybe investigate your life, which can be very, very often. It can be very common. But you may find yourself that, you know, someone may spill out your secret, even non-intentionally, even without the malice of, you know, outing you, but it does happen out there. I love beer. And then just understand that it's really not one and done. This is pretty much for the younger ones out there who are still coming out. You will feel like this may be a complete undying process, because depending on where you go, depending on where you are at life, you may have to explain yourselves to maybe in a new job. Maybe you're making new friends, you got new colleagues, maybe you go to a brand new doctor and you gotta tell the doctor that you are a homo, right? And each time you're gonna feel like it's different with each people that you have to explain all of that stuff. You may get yourself into some internalized homophobia while you're trying to come out, you know, and it's an internal battle for each different person. I cannot really externalize a whole lot for that. But just understand that all of those societal pressures will bring you some sort of internal struggle, right? We do have the shame spiral where you can feel a whole lot of shame and revulsion about your own feelings and attractions, even if you intellectually know it's okay. I did meet people in the past who they were dabbling into that. I would say that they lived in a very religious household, and you know, it was very casual. But then at some point, as they started getting older, these people had to make a choice on living a normal life, again, open quote, a normal life, or live the gay lifestyle, because it is an entire lifestyle. I don't make it an entire lifestyle for myself, but it is part of who I am. You know, it is somewhat part of my society. I don't wear a flag on my forehead, but it surely is part of me, and I gotta deal with it. You may find yourself with a whole lot of self-censorship. You gotta police your own behavior, your own language, and sometimes, depending on where you go, you know, you gotta always looking at where you're actually entering, where you're getting yourself into, where you gotta avoid looking too gay, because again, depending on who you are, it did happen to me a whole lot in the past. Nowadays, thank God, that doesn't happen as much. I don't have to like portray myself somehow, but it does happen out there. Sometimes you may be going through this little desire of being normal, being hetero. As I said, there are people out there, even though they may dabble a little bit into this lifestyle, I would say casually, sexually speaking. But then some people out there may wish they could just be straight, just to avoid even all the difficulties and even though you may love your identity, right? Because being straight is just simple. Being straight is just about, following that path of growing up, going to school, growing up, finding a job, finding a partner, have a family, and get old, have your kids take care of you, shit like that. You may be going through many negative self-talks, believing that you're less worthy, maybe you're less capable of love, or think that you are fundamentally broken just because of who you are. You may doubt yourself in many sort of ways. You may wonder many times on why your life is the way you are right now, and you may get caught on those situations where you just get yourself in a spiral of self-doubt. And there's also this strong distrust of others when you project your own shame, your own problems onto other gay people or queer spaces also. I don't know. If I can give you my opinion about other gay people, is that it is a very touchy subject because you're always being judged on how gay you are, or how the lack of gay you are, and how you perceive others and how you are perceived in the eyes of others. And it's quite complicated. And if I almost feel like the gay world is almost like a bunch of like Regina Georges from Mean Girls. So you're pretty much in little small groups of Regina Georges, a bunch of groups of Mean Girls. So being gay is really hard because of that. And unfortunately, I do not fit those little pockets of people. Now we can also, since we're already talking to people, we can talk about dating and relationships. It is way more than just swiping right. There are unique challenges on finding a connection. You just gotta take into consideration is a much smaller pool. Statistically, I think like maybe it's only one person for every 10 people out there that are actually gay. So it's like a 10th. And if you are trans and all that stuff, that is more advanced into the gayness, I'll call it the gayness. You are like a 0.1%. So as much more you are into this ring, it is much more difficult to find a partner. It is much more difficult to think about love or having like any sort of fantasy about being loved. Nowadays I have become a widower at the age of 30. So for me, I feel like at least right now at my current mindset, I did have my time in love, and at this point I'm not really looking for it. But again, I know it's possible. It's just hard to find, but yeah, searching for other people out there, it's very difficult. It is not easy whatsoever. And I always feel like there is this gap that you need to fill somehow. We do have this pressure of performing. I feel like you have to be extra confident. You gotta be extra charming, or extra mask, or extra femme to attract other people. Because it does happens a lot also. You may be too masculine for some people, you may be too feminine to some people out there also. We do have that saying that the opposites attract, so you get a mask to a femme. But there are also relationships out there that are mask for mask and femme for femme and whatnot, which it just makes it even more complicated. We do have also a lack of role models. So many of us grow up without seeing a healthy, visible, long-term gay relationships. That it can become really hard to envision this thing that a gay couple can be something long-lasting and can be something that it's healthy. We don't have a whole lot, at least in my time growing up. I did not have a whole lot of that growing up. many of us have to navigate through non-monogamy or open relationships, as many calls out there. It is not universal, but it's very common in the gay culture that many out there live a open relationship. I did try myself and it did not work pretty well. I think that in order to have an open relationship, I think you are most likely you need to start open right away from the get-go, because if you already have someone and then after a while you guys decide that you want to open up, there may be many feelings that you might still get stuck with the person that you're with. And then also there's a no PDA reflex. The fuck is that? What the fuck is a no PDA reflex? Which is automatically scanning your surroundings before holding a partner's hand and kissing them in public. A constant reminder of potential judgment or danger. Yeah, I go through that a whole lot. I myself am not very fond of public affection, public displays of affection, but that does not necessarily goes just for gay relationships, also for straight relationships. I don't like seeing other people, kissing or rubbing each other in front of me. I just don't like that shit unless you are at the right ambiance for that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it's just like I much more prefer to be normal. It's like watching two stupid ass dogs trying to fuck in front of you. That's how disgusting it is, right? It's like I am on one mindset right now and these people are just fucking each other right in front of me and I don't feel like I am participating in that. So why do you bitches get started on that shit? Please and thank you. All right. When we talking about, even straight people and whatnot, you may get yourself into straight spaces and you may see some small signs of microaggressions, where you got the subtle or not so subtle reminders of being an outsider, depending on where you go, depending on what kind of people, because you may meet somebody who may be completely okay with you, but then you may meet other people out there who are friends of your friends that are not okay with the gay scene, and that happens quite a bit. There is this constant assumed heterosexuality that you had to go through, where some people will come over and ask you like, hey, do you have a girlfriend? What are your plans for Mother's Day with your family? So the default is always straight. So people will always get to you, and sometimes you may be the most flamboyant, the most femme kind of gay, and there will still be people out there who will ask you, do you have a girlfriend? But that's pretty much how it goes. Some people may ask you inappropriate questions or make inappropriate comments, like, if you're not necessarily just showing up as straight, even if they know that you're gay. Some people may have some sort of curiosity and they may ask questions about it, and they're gonna be like, oh, then let's say you have a partner, they're like, oh, who's the man in the relationship? Or how do you guys have sex? Who's the top? Who's the bottom? Or they make comments like, oh, you don't look so gay, you don't look super gay, so you always constantly try to educate others about who you are and how things actually works. You may hear jokes that are not necessarily funny. You can get to hear many homophobic slurs. I did used to hear many of them when I was younger. I was way more flamboyant. People would literally just scream the FAG word across the fucking street just to get your attention. It doesn't happen as much nowadays, because also I think that I am not as flamboyant as I used to be when I was younger. But it still does happen sometimes, and I'm pretty sure for many people out there, depending on where you live and what culture you're in, it does happen quite a bit. And you're constantly having to decide if you're gonna confront these people, if you're going to ignore, or if you're just going to let it stew, right? Also, when you go into, straight spaces, some of us may feel like we are unwelcome or we are unsafe. It did happen to me before to have this gut feeling where I would go into certain places and I feel like I can't really be myself. And because I like to read the room I'm at, so just imagine as of let's say you're gay and you go into a sports bar, you know what I mean? So you can't really be yourself. And it does happens a lot when you need to code switch very often. You may change your language, your mannerisms, or even your opinions to better fit into a straight environment. The way I try to fix that is just simply avoiding where I don't want to go. If it's a place where I know it's like overly more heteronormative, I would rather just simply not go to the function and just do my own thing, which happens also. But yeah, so we also got that expectations, just to be okay. You got this pressure of constantly being strong and constantly being happy with who you are. But I think that's pretty much general. But when you're gay, it's like people already see you as being a very strong person, and very often just because you have handled so much, people think that certain things will still be easy for you to handle, if you know what I mean. We got this strong queer narrative, as I just said. I feel like you always have to be an advocate, a shining example, or perfectly adjusted to your own identity. I have caught myself in many situations where you are taken as the reference of being the queer, of being the gay, and just because you see a different gay person out there, you're expected to be supportive of certain attitude or certain way of thinking, right? And it's really not like that. Being gay, at least for me, is just a part of who I am, but I do not take that as my entire lifestyle, or I do not take that as completely who I am. You may get caught many times minimizing your struggles, or you may see people minimizing your struggles. People may say that it's really not that bad, or other people have it worse when they try to downplay your pain to yourself or others. It can go either way. You can probably do that, or other people can do that to you. Many times you may catch yourself performing happiness to the allies. You want to show that your straight friends and your family that you're fine with being gay, and that being gay isn't really a tragedy. But even though sometimes it does feel like it, so we got the example as of, I'm a 35-year-old man. I am a widower. I don't have kids. I do very often think about when I grow older, or much older, all the way down the line, and I think to myself, it's like, am I ever going to have kids, or am I going to die alone? Shit like that, you know what I mean? It happens. It fucking happens. You also may catch yourself in a space for vulnerability. Sometimes you feel like you can't really express any sadness, anger, frustration about your experiences without being seen as negative or bitter. Because as we come back to that old part at the very beginning, many people may see you as super strong, or they may put you in a microscope. So that's why it can be really, really hard to be okay with being gay. I mean, yeah, it's great, but it also sucks, Also, at some point, gotta go find your people. Having a chosen family, sometimes for many people out there, it's really not a choice to be with their blood family. In this case, many times we may contact with people that are from workplaces, or they can be from other congregations. You can meet them at the club, you can meet them at all sorts of places, right? So for many people out there who are gay, they have to choose a family. They have to start getting a family along the way, and not necessarily their blood family will be the ones for them. Thankfully, I have full support of my immediate family. As when we talk about my mother, my siblings, my nephew, those are my immediate family. I also do have other, related people out there, but it's not really like I can sit down and talk about things, because we are just simply not relatable to each other, if that does make sense. And the reason that you need to find yourself a chosen family is, that you can get that lifeline of shared experience, where you can connect with others who, they get what you're talking about without you necessarily needing an explanation, or necessarily having to say it over and over, and you feel somewhat validated through your experiences. You may find yourself getting into safe spaces. Many of us had to start talking to people online. That's pretty much how I started, until I started working, because I felt back in the day that I couldn't talk to a whole lot of people. It is important also that you find yourself some mentors or other role models, seeing other people that are happy, successful individuals that have fulfilling lives, that can help you move forward just through association, if you know what I mean. You got the power of validation, hearing your experiences echoed by others, confirming that you are not alone and imagining things. When you see people out there living the very same lifestyle that you are, seeing that it is actually possible, that really does help. And lastly, there is a certain joy of a unconditional acceptance. Once you get your chosen family, that you get to experience what is actual love from the people who celebrate you, because you know that they do like you because you are who you are, and not necessarily because you follow a certain lifestyle, right? And lastly, we're going to talk about moving forward, when you have to find joy and resilience, just about little strategies for coping and thriving. Embracing authenticity is one of them. Living genuinely, even when it's challenging, is ultimately more liberating. You can find yourself thinking that, I have to portray myself to this person or to another person in this circle and that circle. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, it's really not the best way to live, because you may find yourself lying to other people, and depending on who you are, some people are okay with lying. I am not. And you may catch yourself in a position where there's this constant control of perception and image, right? So it can be really challenging. So the best thing to do, if you have enough freedom to do so, is actually coming out to yourself and coming out to your immediate people, just so you, instead of worrying about portraying, if so and so get to know who you are, it's just much better just to be who you are and just be authentic and live the way you want to live. You don't have to fill anybody else's expectations, right? It is really important to set boundaries, protecting your energy and mental health from toxic people or environments. If you do get yourself into certain environments who are not accepting of who you are, I would advise you to maybe just avoid going there. If you got people who constantly got certain types of jokes or certain types of comments, you can always walk away from them. You don't really necessarily need to give them the attention that they want, because sometimes people do that just out of needing attention. So it's important that You could also embrace some activism or an advocacy if you desire to do so. When you challenge or when you channel your frustration into a positive change, even into small ways. Self-care and self-compassion. When you prioritize your well-being and treating yourself with kindness, it's just understanding that you are who you are. There is not really much you can change about being yourself, and you gotta understand that out there it's already hard enough. It's already very complicated, so you gotta be kind and accepting to yourself, just so you can live a better life. Get to celebrate queer joy for some of them. When you're actively seeking out and participating in queer culture, history, and community that brings happiness and validation. You may find those in bigger cities. You may find them, in small cities also, in small pockets, but I find it way easier to find those kind of spaces out in the bigger cities. And you also, gotta have a little perspective shift, that you gotta recognize that while being gay can suck, it is hard. It is not impossible though. It does offer unique perspectives. You live a very unique life. You understand that you're very resilient. You get more empathy towards others because you understand how you train yourself better on having empathy and how to connect with others. And you just get to understand that the sucks part really is just due to the external pressures and not necessarily because you being gay sucks. It's just the outside pressure. It's just part of who you are, not necessarily everything that you are. All right. Anyways, with that said, I want to thank you for watching this video until the end. If you do have any comments, please leave me some comments down below. And if you'd like to leave a donation, I'll leave my links down in the description. You can even just place $1. I don't care. That will still help me, even if you just send me $1. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. And I do hope to see you in the next one. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you later. Bye-bye.